In the depths of the dense forest, where pine trees and ancient trees intertwine, there lay an abandoned summer camp in the midst of this tranquil wilderness. Dry leaves accumulated on the ground, covering it with magnificent autumn colors, while the trees were adorned with their fallen branches. In this abandoned camp, a group of friends decided to spend Halloween night. These friends shared childhood memories and had many stories to exchange under the enchanting night sky. As the night hours passed and dusk approached, the friends began to light a fire in the center of the camp, its flickering flames illuminating their faces intermittently. Yet, the thick darkness still enveloped them, revealing only a portion of the surrounding forest and leaving much of the land shrouded in shadow. The air lightly brushed their faces with a cool breeze, prompting them to draw closer to the fire for warmth. Their conversation flowed slowly, with each person sharing a story or joke, adding a touch of warmth to the chilly night. But as the night deepened and the trees swayed with the dance of the wind, strange sounds and eerie whispers began to emerge from the depths of the forest. Not everyone noticed at first, but as time passed, these sounds grew and faded mysteriously, causing a profound sense of unease to creep into the hearts of the friends. Late at night, as the friends gathered around the fire, they began to hear strange sounds emanating from the depths of the forest. These sounds resembled the cries of monsters or demons calling for help. But whenever one of the friends tried to pinpoint the source of the sounds, they would vanish without a trace. Tension and anxiety began to creep into the friends' minds as they searched among themselves for an explanation of what was happening. Their imaginations ran wild, and every dark shadow stirred suspicion and fear. At the peak of this tension, the trees surrounding the campsite began to move as if they were breathing with eerie breaths, leaving the friends standing in shock and fear. This bizarre phenomenon terrified them and made them question their sanity. On that dark and mysterious night filled with fear and uncertainty, the friends continued to huddle around the crackling fire, their breaths shallow and their hearts racing. As they tried to make sense of the strange events unfolding around them, there was nothing but darkness closing in, swallowing everything in its path. In a sudden moment, the wind ceased, and the strange sound stopped, transforming the forest into an unprecedented calmness. The air moved through the trees silently, as if time itself had frozen in place. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble, as if something massive was moving deep within the forest. Everyone turned towards each other, attempting to pinpoint the source of the vibrations, but the darkness was too dense, obscuring their vision and preventing them from seeing anything clearly. Then came that scream, a sharp, horrifying scream that pierced through the darkness, freezing their blood in their veins. It echoed from deep within the forest, followed by mysterious whispers as if they were calls from another world. Fear crept into their hearts, and the eyes met each other in anxious and tense glances. In a moment of panic, the creatures emerged from among the trees, as if tearing the veil of darkness with their sudden appearance. They were strange-looking creatures of massive sizes, with glowing eyes radiating a frightening red light and sharp fangs gleaming in the firelight. These beings began to approach slowly, their murmuring sounds escalating in a terrifying manner, as if chanting demonic incantations. The friends tried to escape, but the ground swayed beneath their feet, as if defying them and preventing them from moving. Fear began to seep into their minds, and they found themselves trapped between the demonic creatures and the earth that moved as if it were a living being wanting to devour them. The creatures began attacking the friends with indescribable savagery. Bodies were torn apart, blood flowed, and the ground was covered in crimson red. Terrifying screams filled the air, mingling with the sounds of the wind, intensifying the brutality and horror of the scene. In one corner, a friend was being torn apart by the fangs of one of the creatures. She screamed in bitter agony, while fragments of her bones and flesh scattered in the air, mixed with the scent of blood that filled the place. In another corner, another friend clutched his leg, which was torn and dislocated, in a desperate attempt to escape, but one of the creatures approached him and clamped its jaws around his head, resulting in the crushing of his skull and the splattering of blood and brain matter. In another corner, a friend was trying to flee into the depths of the forest, but one of the massive creatures caught her, lifted her into the air, and then tore her body in half, causing blood to gush profusely and drench the ground. The blood gleamed under the pale moonlight, staining the ground and trees with dark hues. Screams echoed, resonating between the shadowy trees. The creatures tore through flesh and bone mercilessly, using their sharp claws and fangs. The earth was drenched in their blood, and the demonic creatures' eyes glowed brighter as the terror in the friends' hearts grew. Amid the chaos, some friends tried to flee into the depths of the forest, but the creatures were faster, capturing and tearing them apart mercilessly. The night turned into a horrifying nightmare, with every attempt at survival met with failure and despair. As they fell one by one, the screams turned into a symphony of terror, played by the wind among the swaying trees. The earth was drenched in their blood, and the demonic creatures' eyes glowed brighter as the fear in the friends' hearts intensified. Amid this terrifying chaos and intense despair, some surviving friends managed to escape into the depths of the dark forest. They raced among the twisted, shadowy trees, with the sounds of screams and desperate cries echoing through the air. But the darkness swallowed them mercilessly, and the demonic creatures pursued them relentlessly, tearing apart everything in their path. As they rushed through the forest in a desperate attempt to survive, they realized they had fallen into a terrifying trap set by the creatures. Suddenly, the ground collapsed beneath their feet, and they fell into a deep pit filled with impenetrable darkness, from which there was no escape. They were trapped, with the demonic creatures surrounding them on all sides, ready to pounce and tear them apart. As they looked at each other with eyes filled with despair and fear, they felt pain creeping into their bodies, gradually losing hope. In a moment of terrifying silence, their bodies were torn apart under the creature's claws, becoming victims of this nightmare that ended in a horrific tragedy. In their final moments, their continuous screams and pleas for salvation echoed, but the creatures left them no room for escape. Each time a creature devoured a friend, blood sprayed into the air, painting scenes of horror and terror on the ground in the dark walls of the pit. Voices gradually faded away, leaving behind only traces of blood and torn remains everywhere. The ground was covered in blood, and human limbs were scattered chaotically. The demonic creatures continued their terrifying frenzy, as if celebrating their victory over their victims. As their voices faded into the smoldering darkness, the silence that enveloped the forest serves as a haunting reminder of the tragedy that befell the group of friends on this night.